Hey y'all, Uncle Paul here, and it's time to get in the arena with Uncle Paul. Stay tuned.
These words will never let me go. Oh no, these words will never let me go.
The Houston metro area has over 7 million people, and yet only one unfiltered source of news. And that's Grizzy's Hood News. Grizzy Castillo has built a platform of dedicated followers, helping her solve cases, find missing people, and cover stories that the mainstream networks just won't cover. When my nephew went missing, Grizzy was the first and only for the longest time to help us. She's become a pillar in the community, and now she's got a podcast, Hood News Unfiltered with Grizzy, that you can watch Saturday mornings at 9:30 a.m. on Houston CW or anytime at grizzlieshoodnews.com. Grizzy works tirelessly to bring us content, sometimes funny, sometimes heartbreaking, and sometimes dangerous, which is why we have to support her sponsors. Go to grizzlieshoodnews.com and find out how you can advertise. Follow her on all the major social media platforms, or watch her anytime at grizzlieshoodnews.com. If it's real news, it's Hood News. That's grizzlieshoodnews.com. Hey y'all, Uncle Paul here, and I'm excited to present Ari Zizzo. He sings our theme song. He's a friend of mine. I had such a good time recording this, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So, without further ado, my good friend Ari Zizzo. Anywho, it is what it is. Y'all, it's a lipstick and rouge kind of budget. Okay. Hey, Ari, did you grow a mustache? Is this new?
Yeah, I'm going back to the stash
Come on, stash.
for a little bit.
Mad at you.
I'm having some breakfast, which is literally just Girl Scout cookies. So
Come on, Girl Scout. Wait, what kind?
tagalongs. Have you had tagalongs?
I've never heard of them.
They're chocolate peanut butter.
Oh. Okay, yes, I have had them. I just never called them that. Like my background, it's so fancy. You know, we got such a high budget here.
Love the shirt too.
Yeah, oh, Pug's not there? Okay,
Amazing.
so we are recording already, but that's okay.
Cool.
So I'll edit all that stuff out. I don't know why I'm nervous. I never get nervous before an interview. Never.
Yeah, man.
I'm not you showing the Emmy.
Let me move that.
No, I mean you can. I mean you don't have to. I think it's awesome. It might want to be in the interview.
It might. It
I
does
just-
sit there all
I
day.
just noticed it. That's actually in my one of my questions, but I'll tell you. Okay. Get into my zone. Hello, audience. We have on the line Mr. Ari Douglas Zizzo, friend, singer, songwriter, producer, activist. What else would you say about yourself, Ari? Who is Ari Zizzo?
Oh man. Who is Ari Zizzo? Ari Zizzo is a lot of things. I mean, you named a bunch of them. I'm from New York City, born and raised. I live in Los Angeles now. I've been out here about 5.5 years. I came out here to continue pursuing my music career, which I've been doing my entire life. It's everything to me: singing and writing and performing, producing. It's in my blood. It's in my family.
You skipping ahead through my questions now. Come on.
I tend to do that.
Wait a cotton picking minute. Well, thank you. So I just kind of want to set an intention. I want to get to know. I mean, I know you, but like I really want the audience to get to know you. And we did talk before about, because Ari is a man that happens to be trans. That we will kind of dive into some of that, just because a lot of my followers are in Texas.
Yeah.
That has some very anti-trans, laws being passed, and there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation and just flat out lies about trans folks. So we will go there. And for those that aren't, that are new to me, I do say the word girl a lot. This is something Ari knows, but
Yeah.
those trans viewers or listeners that might be hearing, I'm not misgendering Ari. Girl
Yeah.
is more like my amen than anything. So I just wanted to put that out there. But
Yeah. No worries.
I remember when we, so Ari and I met in treatment, in outpatient treatment. I think I just completed inpatient, like maybe a month or so prior, when Ari walked in. And Ari, it's been a long time since I've had a straight guy in my midst. So I immediately code switched. Like I was like, bro, like, dude, like, I don't like seriously. I think you may be the only straight guy friend I have. Like
That's wild.
it is kind of wild because in LA, like you can live in your own little circle and bubble. I've learned that's
Yeah.
not the same in Texas. But I'm either around all girls, um, or women, not girls. I'm around all women or gay men who are effectively the same. I mean, but I can say that. I can say that. So yeah, so it took me a minute to kind of break out of that, like, bro, because Ari is very much a bro. And when he walks in, like, yeah, you're very bro-esque. It
Yeah.
took me, I was waiting, honestly, like, I mean, I love you now and I know you better than this, but I was just waiting for like the F-bomb to drop or like, because it's the vibe that I kind of grew up with in Texas. Like when Ari walked in, oh yeah, what's up, bro? Like I was just waiting for. I hate to say it because I'm so accustomed to it, but I was waiting for the homophobia. It's not there.
Right.
It's not there. But it just took me. I just had to say that it took me a minute to stop code switching and know that I was safe around you,
Sure. I completely understand that.
which is kind of a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
Or maybe not weird, maybe it's not the right word, but just a different dynamic for me. It's been a minute since I felt like that. Initially, obviously, it's not there now, um,
Right.
but just in that initial, oh, and that's Dobby acting. What is Dobby doing? Dobby, get over here. Naturally, when I'm recording, put him in the room because he can be a little Karen with my neighbors and start going nuts. Um,
Yeah.
but now I don't know. I think Bridget Jones is playing with him under the door. Bridget Jones is my cat, y'all, and Dobby's my dog. In case you don't know, I'm not gonna edit that. It just is what it is. Hopefully he will mind himself. Let's see. Doo-doo-doo. How do you define being a trans man?
Uh, how do I define being a trans man? I think my experience as a trans person has changed a lot over the years. I've been out in the world as a man for 14 years. And I mean, I like to say my entire life because I've really always just been this, uh, you know, but I just didn't have the language back then to explain that I felt that I was trapped in the wrong body. And so for those who might not understand or even know what trans means, like I was born in a female body. Um, but I like to say that my spirit and who I am, my character, everything about me has always just been this. I just happened to be born in a body that didn't match with who I am as a person, which trust me, a lot of people are like, what the F? Do you care about cursing, Paul?
No, absolutely not. I'm from
People are
Texas.
like,
We
what the
pray and
fuck?
cuss at the same time.
Right. Yeah. People are like, what the fuck is that? That's so weird. And like, yeah, I know. Trust me. Like, like I did not understand what that meant for me or my life, except that I didn't want to be alive if I couldn't be myself. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in their own ways. But for me, being trans at first was something I despised about myself. I hated that I was other or different. I couldn't just be a boy or be quote unquote normal. Um, there was always something about me that felt other. And, that is in part because due to the time that I came out and I was the only one of me that I knew in 2010, 2011, 2012 in high school. Um, and I was constantly bullied and I went through a lot of shit, um, being the only one of me that I knew and that anyone really knew, as a kid. And high school is ruthless regardless of who you are. Uh,
Girl.
exactly. Like it's rough. But you know, I got through it, and my identity, you know, became more and more meaningful to me as I got older and began to accept my reality, and that it wasn't a bad thing. That just because people didn't necessarily understand didn't make me wrong or bad. I knew very much who I was and who I am. I've always fought really hard for my identity and been somewhat, comfortable and confident in it. Um, but it took a long time for me to get to a place where I could tell people I was trans and not be scared. Um, and even to this day, it's hard sometimes. Um, but to me, being trans is a really unique and beautiful experience, and I'm grateful that my higher power gave me this challenge to face in my life, because it's allowed me to really chip away at what being human means and what being,
Say more about that.
well, I've had to figure out who I am and what and how that relates to how people perceive me, how I perceive myself, what how my body plays into that, how my physical appearance versus my soul and my character and my spirit, how all of these things come together. And I think for anybody in the world, we're all just trying to feel real and feel seen and feel heard and feel whole. And for me, that experience of trying to discover what that feels like is particularly unique and challenging, because the body I was given is something I grew up not wanting and hating and feeling like separate from. Um, and that's a really challenging thing to describe to people and even to wrap my own head around. I still wonder to this day, like, why I was born this way, because I was born this way. This is something I've known about myself and felt since I could take my first steps. Um, just how anybody else innately knows, like cis people innately know they're a man or a woman when they're kids. They just know.
And for those followers or viewers, listeners that don't know what cis means, cis is short for cisgendered, which just means your gender identity lines up or aligns with the gender you were assigned at birth. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the body you were born into, it makes sense to you. That's the one that you want. If you were born as in a female body and you grow up feeling like a girl, then yeah, you're a cisgender person. Um, yeah, transgender, you just kind of flip it. You feel the opposite of the way you were born. Um, but yeah, I've had to really fight for my place in the world, both in terms of how other people see me, or how I think I want them to perceive me, and how I perceive myself. That's been the biggest challenge for me my whole life, is kind of fighting with myself, um, to be seen and accepted.
Ooh, ooh, Ari, that is so deep. Would you say you're 100% accepting of yourself today?
Uh, no, I don't think I ever will be. I don't think anyone ever will be 100% in acceptance of themselves. We all have our quirks and kinks that will need to be worked out as we go through life. Some arise later, some are carried with us throughout our whole lives. You know, I think I will always struggle with an aspect of being trans. But the the more like visceral, like hate icky, awful feeling I got when talking about being trans, or feeling like I was given this like I don't even know, like I feel like for a long time I thought I was a mistake,
Mm.
and I no longer feel that way. I feel grateful for the trans experience that I've had. Um, I constantly work to be in better acceptance of that aspect of myself, and I'd say I've come a really, really long way. Um, where to the point where I'm comfortable coming on a podcast or being on TV or talking to strangers on the street about myself and my body and my journey, because it's important to me that people understand that I'm human,
Hmm.
um, and that people like me are also human. Um, and yeah, I guess the short answer would be I'm definitely in acceptance of who I am,
And
and I'm a lot more comfortable with where I am in my life as a trans person. I'm proud of it.
amen to that. Now, how much of a role do you think? Because I'm going to make an assumption here. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I assume that you've had gender affirming medical care throughout your life.
Sure.
Okay. How much of a role does that, taking testosterone, taking things that make your outsides look more male because they are, but how much of a role do you think that plays into your feeling accepting of your body and of who you are?
Um, it's huge. Um, it's huge. When I first really knew, like, the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, for me before I came out, was hitting the wrong puberty.
Oh,
So I went through puberty as a female for a few years when I was younger. And that is when I felt that my body was almost like rejecting me, that like my soul was this like invasive thing in a in a vessel that didn't want it.
hmm.
And it was changing in ways that pushed me further and further away from the world. Um, and that was just the most terrifying thing. I felt like I was suffocating in my own skin, like it was just hell. And when I had the opportunity to have medical treatment, really, for what I was struggling with, um, I didn't even know that that would be an option at first, you know? Um, when I was 15 going on 16, so April of 2012, I started taking testosterone injections. Um, so also known as hormone replacement therapy for a lot of trans people. When you begin to transition, you either take injections of the hormones of the gender that you want to transition to, or pills, patches, gels. There's all sorts of ways to do it now. Um, for me, I give myself a shot every week of testosterone, and it put me through male puberty when I was 16. Um,
How old are you now?
I'm 27. I'll be 28 this summer.
Baby. Sorry.
Yeah, little baby.
Little baby Ari.
Little baby. But yeah, when I was able to finally see myself change and be able to go out in the world and express my male identity by just being somewhere, that was, I mean, I cannot tell you what that did for me. I also got what's known as top surgery to trans men when I was 16 as well that same year, which is basically like breast removal.
Can I talk about that real quick? Because I've told you this story. I don't talk about it that often. But I remember, I think it was Oprah, or I'm pretty sure it was Oprah because I loved Oprah. When she had a trans person on, and they defined for them that trans meant they were born in the wrong body, and that as they hit puberty, I'm pretty sure it was a trans man. Um, when they hit puberty and their breasts started developing, they felt like their body betrayed them, and that to me like was a light bulb moment. Because when I was going through puberty, I was incredibly morbidly obese, and it really jacked with my testosterone levels. So when I went through puberty, I grew breasts too, and I'm not talking man boobs, even though I hate that freaking word or phrase. I'm talking actual breasts. And one was a D cup and one was a B cup, and they weren't even like symmetrical. So so for years, I was, I was a large guy, but I also had actual breasts. So going through gym class and having to change, like these were things that it was, I mean, maybe you can relate, but it was just totally, it was a nightmare. Like I would create scenarios where I didn't have to change in gym. There was like one whole year that I was sick the entire year. So I couldn't go into like the locker room because it was terrifying because I'd get made fun of or they touch me. Like I had no bodily autonomy. And it wasn't until, and I went after I discovered like chest binders, which was in my 20s. And y'all, this is like Spanx for the chest for to flatten.
Yep.
They're not comfortable.
And they're not.
In Texas, humid heat, it's miserable. So I used to work out in them too. But
yep, same.
Well, it's a nightmare. I think it was 2015. Yeah, it was a year after I got out of treatment. So it was 2015 the first time that I had my top surgery. And now, like you'll almost always see me in a tank top or a cutoff because I couldn't wear them for most of my life. So I'm not trans, but if there's any way that I can empathize with specifically trans men, it's that.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I completely relate to every single bit of what you just said. I had to wear binders for, a few years. And I was an athlete growing up, so I played sports and worked out in them, and they were just these really constrictive, tight. I used to have to step into them and pull them up over my body because I couldn't put them over my head. But yeah, when I got that surgery, it was incredibly freeing. And because I was smaller up top, I don't have really any scarring. And that has allowed me to feel or look more like, I guess, like natural. I don't know the terminology to use.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah. For me as a kid, being like the only trans person I knew, I really just wanted to fit in with everybody. And the surgery I got helped me do that. I remember being able to take my shirt off at the beach and like wearing tank tops, doing stuff I never could do as a kid for the first time. It felt like being reborn in a way. I had this new body, I had this new outlook, this new identity that everyone could see and touch and feel and hear, and like I had arrived. It was amazing. It was really amazing. I'm really grateful that I had access to that care. It took me and my parents a little while to find people that were willing to work with someone as young as me at the time, but it was not super uncommon for young kids to transition. And when I say young kids, I mean like kids in high school mainly.
Teenagers.
Yeah. but yeah, that gender affirming care was life altering, and I had to wait 2 years before I was able to have access to that care because they required me to go through therapy and live out in the world as like socially as a male before I did any, permanent changing of my body, which was really frustrating to me at the time. But looking back, like I'm happy that they had me go through a process that made me feel at least safe. And there was a process that I had to go through. It's frustrating, but it was helpful. I had an amazing therapist who was also a trans man. His name was Elijah Neely, who is a real trailblazer for our community. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was the only other trans person I knew, and he really, really helped me when I was younger, like figure out what being trans really meant, and what being a man meant to be. I don't walk around and say like I'm trans. I'm Ari. I'm a guy. I live the trans experience. I've had to transition to get to where I needed to go, and it's a part of my life, but I don't necessarily like let any one thing define me.
Absolutely. Now, back to the gender affirming healthcare. I'm skipping down my questions, but how do you feel when you see politicians or red states specifically going after trans affirming healthcare? And what do you think that would have done to you if it was denied to you?
Oh my God. It's infuriating. And it's really scary that politicians want to get involved with people's bodies. It just doesn't make sense. If I had been denied the care I had, I don't know what would have happened to me. I mean, I can tell you I'm very open about my substance abuse problems and my mental health, and I have struggled with those things my entire life. And when I was a teenager, I did try to take my own life, and I would not be surprised if I wouldn't have made it, honestly. And that's not something I say lightly. I couldn't live with myself unless I could live like as a man.
Mm.
And the fact that there are particularly minors, particularly teenagers who know who they are and are being denied the care that they deserve. It just breaks my heart that politicians are meddling with family issues and people's bodily autonomy. It's just beyond me. I think that, there's a process that trans people have to go through to get the healthcare they need, and that's in place for a reason. I did an episode of a show on a channel called Jubilee on YouTube that was called Middle Ground, and they basically had me, some other trans people, and some people who detransitioned in a room together to talk about our experiences with gender healthcare. And for those who don't know, a detransitioner is someone who, it's a very, very rare case, but somebody who thought they were trans, began to transition, and then realized that that wasn't it, and go back to where they were before they started transitioning. that didn't really start happening until more recently. And that's, I'd say, it's complicated. I'd say my own community and social media are a little bit to blame for that. Being trans is like a really serious thing, and you know, it's not just something you can like try on one day and take off the next day. Or experiment with, really. I mean, experimenting with your gender identity and how you want to express yourself in the world is one thing, but then when you go into medicine and medical intervention, like those are irreversible changes, and I feel like that's not really stressed enough. When I see like a lot of content from people in the LGBTQ community, it's very much like top surgeries for everybody, hormones are for anybody, you can do whatever you want, and it's like, no.
Do you think this is why perhaps the 2 years of therapy was so vital in that process? I mean, obviously you didn't necessarily need it, but there is a need for a very small percentage. 'Cause,
Right.
y'all, we're talking like, don't quote me, but I know it's less than 10. It's like two.
It's literally like 0.1%.
Okay.
It's but still, those are real people. Those are real people's lives. And my own community, like trans people are a really small percentage of the population as well. It's not a super common thing as much as, the right would like people to believe that suddenly there's all these trans people. It's like, no, a lot of us have been here, but because we have access to things like TikTok and seeing into other people's lives, you just see it a lot more often because people want to talk about it. They want you to know what it is.
Or want to use it as a tool to scare people into the ballot box, to the polls.
Yeah.
Sadly. Now,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
for this, I'm going to hit one more question and then we'll move on to there's another topic because there's so many aspects of you that I don't want to just focus all on the trans aspect of you. But from what I know of trans people, now I'm not trans, but I have read a lot. I've got, a couple of trans friends. But when it comes to gender affirming care, specifically for trans women, not getting testosterone blockers early on is so detrimental to them later because testosterone is not very forgiving.
It's irreversible. Yeah.
I don't think that's spoken about enough. Now, obviously, you're not a trans woman, but if I can put myself into their shoes, I feel especially scared for them because it's harder to, in my opinion, it's harder to hide being a trans woman than it is a trans man. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that. And to that point, like, that's why there needs to be like things in place to make sure that when people are transitioning as minors in particular, there's like time in which you spend out in the world as the identity you want to transition to without medical intervention, to just really explore what that means to you. And because hormone replacement therapy is, especially for trans men, it's irreversible. For trans women, because they're naturally born with testosterone, when you take estrogen, it doesn't just turn back the clock and get rid of the testosterone. It helps a lot with a lot of their dysphoria, but it's really tough. And what's really challenging too is there really isn't like a one size fits all answer to how we treat trans youth or people who are looking to transition. It's a very personal experience for everybody and depends on how old you are, what what access to what care you have, what your family's like, what your finances are like. There's a lot of things in place. But I feel like more trans people should talk about what their like experience is like medically transitioning and what they notice, and the fact that there are surgeries and other aspects of transitioning that are irreversible. And for some people that's an amazing, exciting thing. Like for me, I would never ever want to be anything other than who I am.
Sure. And I just
Um,
want to say this to those that may be listening: gender reassignment surgery is not being performed on babies or
no,
children. That's
you're
false information, just flat out
yeah.
lies.
Yeah, no, look, surgeries are rarely done with minors. Top surgery, for someone in my case, I had been seen by a lot of doctors, a lot of specialists, and and a therapist, and it had been decided unanimously across the board of medical professionals and my family that this was the right path for me. Um, and it was. And in the majority of cases for trans people who get these, you know, surgeries and start hormone replacement therapy, that it is the right path for them. People who have gone back in every situation I've heard about a detransitioner, there was some sort of mental health piece that wasn't factored in. There was some piece in that puzzle missing, where they didn't get seen by the right person, or they weren't in therapy for long enough, or they didn't unpack X, Y, and Z. And like, there are a lot of factors at play there that have nothing to do with being trans. Um, uh, and yeah, most surgeries are not happening on minors, and children don't have any medical interference really, unless they're given hormone blockers, which there's a huge controversy about that. I took a medication called Lupron, which is designed to stop the flow, in my case, of estrogen in my body, so that I could sit in a place and be comfortable without my body further changing.
Sure.
Before I fully transitioned. But if I ever wanted to stop taking that, my body would go right back to where it was. I have no adverse side effects from taking Lupron. It's been 14 years. There's no evidence of that drug harming trans people.
There is evidence of what there actually is evidence of is these anti-trans laws and the bullying. And I believe, I could be wrong, but last I checked, the percentage of trans folks that have attempted suicide is nearly 50%.
Yeah.
And it's because of the, culmination of all this bullshit around trans issues that
Yeah.
has absolutely nothing to do with trans people and everything to do with discrimination. And I always go back to white supremacy, because for me that's at the heart of everything when it comes to this. But that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But
No, but real quick to your point, like that statistic has remained the same the entire time trans people have existed, because it's so hard for us to go out in the world and be treated as human beings. If you're watching this and you don't understand why someone is trans, you don't have to.
Mm.
They're just a person going through whatever God gave them to deal with in their lives, and you poking and prodding and deciding not to accept them as a human being because of something you don't understand. Imagine if the roles were reversed, or imagine that your child were going through this. Imagine you were going through something like this.
Mm.
Because we don't get to choose what bodies we're born into, who we are. We are born into the world, and boom, there you go. That's life. Like, you know, I didn't choose this for myself.
Mm.
No one would decide to be trans if they had the choice as babies. It's a really difficult thing to carry, but because of the work I've had to do on myself as a result, I'm proud to have that be part of who I am. But it's, you know, it's really disheartening to see how many people are just unwilling to try and understand or to, you know, see people like me as just other people.
Mm.
Or just like, you know, if you don't understand, that doesn't mean that person's inherently bad or that you then need to go out of your way to make their life more difficult.
There's that. And also, whether or not you believe in trans being a thing, trans people aren't going anywhere.
Right.
You're just making their lives harder. You're
Yeah.
not you're not getting rid of trans people.
And I'm not and like there's the fact that people don't believe that it's real doesn't even make sense
I-
to me. Like, I'm sitting right here as a real living person telling you that this is a very real experience for me. It has been since I was born. And like I said, I didn't choose this. I didn't understand this. I didn't want this. I had all the same feelings that people who are transphobic probably felt um, about myself.
Oh, that could be a whole nother episode already. We might have to go longer because there's so much I want to, if that's okay with you.
Yo, yeah, I got all the time in the world,
There's so
but
much I want to hit on, but this is also a really vital conversation. Come on, phone. Hey, who's calling? Let's put them on. No, I'm joking.
yeah, let's throw them on.
But this is, I mean, it's such a vital conversation, and I grew up in the South, and I heard that all the time. Well, I don't believe in it. Your belief is irrelevant. Like it doesn't. Yeah, there. No trans person is trying to change how you believe. They're not coming to turn your kids trans. Like that's not a thing.
Yeah, you can't turn somebody trans or gay or anything. Like,
If you could,
open
women
the
would have
door.
turned me by now.
Yeah.
I mean, honey, if I had $1 for every woman that was calling me John Stamos, which,
Oh my God.
come
You
on,
do
John
like John
Stamos.
Stamos. That's so funny.
It's the baby, it's the colonizer context. These are not real, y'all. I was tweaked the fuck out one night and thought, oh, blue contacts are gonna be cute.
Oh my
Because I
God.
haven't changed them out. My eyes are naturally hazel. But yeah,
Yeah.
anywho, I was at Knott's Berry a couple weeks ago. Has anyone ever told you you look like John Stamos? No, never heard about him before. Never.
Never heard in my life.
But anywho, enough about me. Is there anything else you want to say about trans issues before we move on? I mean, I'm sure it'll come back to play in another question in some capacity, but
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I guess for me, I would say just get curious. Um, you know, if you have an opportunity to talk to somebody who is trans, respectfully be there and be curious about them. Um, I'm somebody that's an open book. Like, if anyone watching this podcast genuinely has questions for me, you can find me on social media and message me and I'll talk to you. Not a lot of trans people are like that, but you know, I encourage you to go and try and learn and understand more about our experiences as people in the world.
Hmm.
And not just decide for yourself that we aren't real, because we are, and I am. I'm sitting right here, and you know, my life has been very challenging having this be a part of it, but it's it's a really fascinating thing to look into and to learn about a person if that's something that they face in their life.
what would?
And
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, like, I really hope that my own community gets better at talking about these issues and educating others without being so aggressive and angry and almost forceful about it. I think both extreme sides of the political spectrum are to blame for where things are right now. You know, I've always found that people understand me the most when I just approach them on their level and um am open to people just being curious about me and not taking it as an offense if they want to ask questions about my body. Uh, you know, obviously don't be an asshole, but I think just, it's the age old saying, treat others how you want to be treated.
The golden rule, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But what were you about to ask me?
God, what was I got? Oh, I was gonna say, what would you say to that trans boy or trans girl in one of these states where their rights are being stripped away, their gender affirming care is being stripped away? They can't. I mean, they can transition, but not to the level you did. And I know there's no level, but you know what I mean. They can't. They don't have that medical help right now in a very they're going into a very trying time like puberty. What do you say to that?
Oh man. That's really tough. I'd say to them, first of all, that this is, goes without saying, but you're not alone in your fight. There's a whole community of people like you that exist, period. And I hope that even alone brings comfort to some of you that, when I was coming out and transitioning, I thought for the longest time that I was the only one that had to go through what I was going through. And that's just not the case. I would encourage you to find people that you know, idolize or that you respect or that you're curious about who are in your community on social media and use those resources that we have today to reach out and to be seen and heard by other people who might be able to help you. Just because you are stuck in a state that refuses to see you doesn't mean that you won't have access to the things that you need in your life. You know, I had to be super patient when I first came out. I had to wait, 2 years before I could do anything. And for a lot of people, it takes longer. And for some people, it doesn't. Everybody's journey is their own, but you know who you are and stand firm in that. My hope is that, some of these families will figure out a way to get out of their states and get the care that they need in other places in this country. It's not, this whole country isn't anti-trans. There are places that you hopefully can go to get the help you need. But if you can't right now, work with what you have, which is your identity that you know is real. Any support that you have in your life, hang on to that and use social media to reach out to people like you and build a community around you to help you, because you never know how people will be able to help. And if you ever want to talk to me, you can find me on social media. My name's Ari.
I'll tag you or tag your socials in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, I am here for anybody that needs to talk seriously, and whatever I can do to help maybe move things along in terms of you transitioning. I'm happy to talk to parents. I'm happy to talk to you. I've done this my whole life as I've grown up with a lot of families. So You're not alone. Stand strong in who you are always. And if you're not going to be able to see the changes you want to see in yourself physically right now, know that you will. That will happen for you. Just try to hang on and explore what it means to be you in the meantime.
Well, that was a deep answer, Ari. I think it make me cry. Okay. All
Hey,
right.
Paul,
Now,
can we pause for 2 seconds so I
sure,
can
sure.
grab water?
Yeah, I must. Everyone, this is Mango. Oh my God, he's huge. Huge. My God, Ari, he's like the whole damn box.
I know. He is
Ari,
ridiculous.
I don't remember him being so big.
He is a big boy.
I call him Mangolicious.
Yeah, he's ridiculous.
I love.
I got him that size. I didn't make him that size.
Wait, he's always been. Wait, you didn't get him as a kitty?
I did not.
Oh,
I got him. So my ex-girlfriend. Hold on, let me say this while I'm here.
no, we are recording just that point.
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend and I were looking to get a cat, and we found him on a Facebook page for people who are looking to rehome their kitties, and we got him when he was 8, so he'll be 12 this year. A
That's-
sweet boy.
Love that. Thank you for saving him.
Oh yeah. A
Now,
sweet boy.
Ooh, there's a lot to cover. If I was going to end at an hour, that would give us 10 minutes left, but there's way too much. So you are a singer-songwriter and producer. And you come from a very musical family. Y'all, if you don't know, like you've probably heard one of his family's songs in some capacity or one of their artists. It's crazy, y'all. Like, okay, let me tell you a little side story. So Ari told me he was a singer, y'all, and I'm kind of jaded because everyone in LA is something, you know?
Exactly.
So when he said that, I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm like nodding. Yeah, sure you are.
Yep.
And then I go, I don't know, something told me to, because I was cooking and, I got I can't say her name because she's always listening. I'll call her Shemexa. I got Shemexa in the kitchen. And I said, Shemexa, play Ari Zizzo. And it was these words. And y'all, I just started bawling, crying. I don't know why. There's something beautiful about that song, which is now my theme song. Thank you, Ari. But yeah, you are very talented when it comes to that. You have a very beautiful voice, but you're also the piano in that song is just amazing to me.
Thanks, man.
When did this start? Have you always been musically gifted? It's in your blood, but hell, honey, it's in a lot of people's bloods, and they're not always.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Paul. You've been such a huge supporter and like fan of my music. It means more to me than you know. Like really, just thank you. I I have always been musically inclined. My dad will tell me stories of when I was like 1 or 2 years old, like perfectly playing something in rhythm or like singing the different parts to a song or something. It's part of my soul. It's just like I've always been able to sing and hear things musically and pick things up really quickly. I started playing instruments when I was really young, like 3 or 4 is when I started playing piano. And I taught myself how to play guitar, drums, bass, various types of guitars. I've just this has been it's been a part of me that's always wanted to come out and be expressed. So it's just like it's like an invisible like body part that I have. I don't know how to explain it. It's
Get that more than you know.
yeah, and like I've always been able to sing and write as well. Writing is everything to me. I love writing lyrics. Um it it's just the most incredible form of self-expression that I have. It's to be able to write songs and then share them.
When did you start performing live?
I started performing live when I was about 8 or
Wow.
9. Yeah, I was really young, and I was terrified of singing in front of people. So I would just write songs on the piano and would play my piano pieces live. And then I finally decided to sing for people when I was 13 because I had been hiding it in my room. I would wait till my parents would go to sleep to sit there and record myself on
Aw.
and singing. And um, my mom eventually found all the recordings I had done on her laptop and like sent it to all of her friends. And my parents were like, "Oh my
Aw,
god,
I love
Ari,
it.
like what the fuck, dude?" Like they had no idea. Um, but I remember that show I had when I was 13. I was in 8th grade, and I decided the day of the show that I was going to perform a song that I wrote that day.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
I was shaking on the piano. Just, I was so fucking scared. And people's reactions blew me away. I mean, just seeing my friends cry and like how moved people were and how I felt after I
Huh.
played that song. Like, that was the night that I knew this was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And that was at the Bitter End in New York City, which is the stage I grew up playing on. So like legendary spot in the city.
Go back to that feeling. What is that feeling?
It's freedom. It's like like oneness, like wholeness. I feel full. I feel high. I feel out of body and so deeply in body that I don't really know how else to describe it. I just go somewhere when I play. It's like going on a trip and then coming back down when the show's over. It's like it's really magical. And
Have you seen the movie Soul?
yeah,
What did you think of that? Because that to me was, I mean, I'm not a performer, but I am a writer.
yeah, I honestly I watched. I was like in and out watching it on an airplane, so I
Okay.
need to like
Because
actually.
yeah, they really dive into that, what performing does for him, and I think it describes perfect what you just said. And I've heard so many different artists, be they writers, poets, singers, songwriters, say pretty much the exact same thing in different words, you know?
Yeah.
And where was I going with that? My brain just went bloop. Um, but when, let's see, do you remember the first song you ever wrote? Because I can remember the first poem I ever wrote, and it's horrible.
Sure, yeah. There were a few. Um, the first song I performed was a song called "Scared," ironically.
Interesting.
And it was right before I came out
Mm.
as trans, and it was a song about myself being scared for the world to see me. I think I'll send it to you at some point.
Love that.
Um, it was a song about being afraid of losing myself as well.
Ooh.
Um, because I couldn't live as who I wanted to be. Um, there's that. There's a song called Somehow, which is I think it's on that EP that These Words is on.
Oh,
That was my first EP. That turns 10 this year. Can't
come
believe
on,
it.
10.
Um, that, and there were 2 other songs. There's one called For the Weekend that is a really, really pretty song. I don't even really know what it's about. It's kind of a stream of consciousness lyric. And then The Awesome Song, which was the piano song that I wrote that I first performed when I was 9.
Oh,
I still remember it for the most part, which is crazy.
you just got me. I'm sorry, you got me reminiscing. because I remember the first poem I ever wrote. It was called "The Flower Pot," which was so bad, but it was in kindergarten, and my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Daniels, had a big flower pot, and I don't know why. I just started looking at it, and I felt something about it, some kind of way. So I
Yeah.
started writing, and she caught me writing, um, and she had me read that damn horrible poem over the freaking PA for the whole school, and
Oh my God.
it was looking back, it feels good, but at the time, I didn't want anyone to just, like, see that. It was so personal for me. Uh,
Right.
and for, like, I don't know if you would agree with this, but if I start creating something and I don't finish, I won't show anyone it. Like, it has to be finished for me to share it with someone. I don't know why. And for me, I find writing, I can be my truest self on paper. It's so much easier for me to go into those, like, dark corners of my soul and my personality, my mind when I'm writing. Do you find that similar?
Oh yeah. I mean, it gives you access to a part of yourself that you can't really access any other way. Um, it's there's almost this like for me this when it comes to writing this like childlike
Mm.
wonder and thought pattern that I get into. You know, like how like kids say the darndest things.
Yeah.
Say these amazing out of pocket things, and there's an element of that sticks with you as a songwriter, um that at least for me like allows me to explore the way words connect and feelings and thoughts connect in a way that defies like logic.
Mm.
And that's a really interesting place to go to. It's like going for a dive and not knowing what you're gonna find.
Ooh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Now, so we're running out of time. But there's so much. I mean, you're such a layered person, and I appreciate that about you. So you did hit on it. That you are, and we both hit on it, and that we're both in recovery. We're recovering addicts. When did that start manifesting for you, and how did it?
um I think I've always searched for ways to be outside of myself. Um, and because of what I was going through as a kid, when I discovered alcohol, um, I thought that was like the golden ticket, you know? Uh, I had my first experience being drunk when I was 11. Um, and my first like blackout when I was 13.
Wow, and you're not Mexican.
No. But, you know,
I can say that, yo.
being born and raised in New York City, you just have access to everything. And city kids, like we like to party. I loved partying. And I loved being able to escape my body and my mind, because it was such a painful place to be stuck in reality for me for so long. And drugs and alcohol allowed me to go somewhere else where I felt better. Um, and that really manifested at a very young age for me. And then carried through to this day. Um, you know, even though I am sober right now, I have 130 days today.
Come on, 130 days. Congratulations.
Thanks, dude. You know, I had a year and a half sober before this. I still, even in my sobriety, am always looking for that feeling again. Because that's all I've known my whole life is like, if you want to feel better, you got to be outside of yourself.
Mm.
Um, and I'm learning more and more that that's not true.
Well, I think you just kind of hit on it too when you were talking about performing and going into that place it's so out of your body and so in your body at the same time. And I would argue, for me at least, that using gets me closer to that space in a very easy way. Like I don't have to create anything. I can just, shoot up and I'm there. I'm in that heavenly zone. But it's
Yeah.
very deceptive, obviously, because it's not the same place. It just feels like that place. Is that the
Right.
same for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I I would argue the only difference for me is when I'm high like that, the like feeling one with myself and tapped into myself is a lot more artificial
Hmm. For sure.
um than when I'm going and performing or writing or producing. It's it that feeds me in a different way. It's like eating fast food as opposed to eating like really good, wholesome,
Mm.
nourishing stuff. Um, it fills a void, but not in a way that's really gratifying or that actually feeds you. Um, but yeah, I used drugs and created music a lot. And I made some amazing stuff. Which, when I first got sober was scary because I was kind of like, will I ever be able to write and create music like I did when I was high when I'm sober? And I discovered that yes, absolutely. I absolutely can, and I would make even better stuff. Um yeah.
I'm gonna quote a quote. That doesn't sound right. I'm gonna quote Brene Brown and tell me what you think of this quote. It's one of my favorites. Um, but the quote is, "Unused creativity is not benign; it metastasizes." Now, for me, what that means is when I'm not creating in some capacity, whether it's a silly video on TikTok or writing, I am dying inside. Like it's cancerous. It metastasizes. It takes me over, and sometimes it leads me to the needle. What do you think when you hear that quote?
I think I think that's amazing. Everybody needs an outlet, a way to express themselves. And I feel similarly, if I'm not able to express myself in the way that I need to, it does manifest in ways that, I mean, make me want to go elsewhere, you know? Um, I always need to be creating, whether I'm expressing myself through like fashion and clothes or writing and posting stuff on Instagram, or just sitting there and performing for myself or playing shows. Like I need to be doing that stuff to live.
Hmm. Ooh, Ari. What is your process for songwriting? How does that begin for you?
Oof. That's a hard question to answer because I don't have like a singular process. I think it's changed for me as I've been writing throughout my life. I'm very lyric focused, so I typically write words before anything else. Um, Sometimes I'll write them in tandem with a melody. Um, but words come first for me because that's the foundation of everything. The melody that I create will usually be a way to express the words that I'm saying.
Ooh.
Um, and I know a lot of people write melodies first, and to me, I feel like that's so limiting because then you have to figure out what words fit your melody. And I like to do the opposite. I'm like, I need to say what I need to say.
Oh, I get that on such a deep level.
Yeah, I need to say what I need to say, and then the music can kind of envelop that however it may. Um, I've recently been doing a little like challenge with myself where I give myself like prompts or I ask people like specifically to send me 3 like random unrelated words, and I'll give myself a certain period of time to write a song using all 3 of those words. Um, little like almost like games like that
That
really help get the juices flowing when I can't just like sit there and pull from somewhere. That will usually get that childlike wonder brain moving and thinking in ways that are unusual. Like I wrote a song yesterday with the words lavender, sunset, and clouds.
ooh.
And I ended up writing like a really, really pretty song that was, I mean, essentially about my ex in a relationship dying.
Oh, I was
Uh,
going to ask if you could share it with us, but that might be too personal.
it'll be on my Instagram. I'm gonna make a little highlight reel with all these 3-word songs. But I love challenges, like little prompts and challenges that get those juices flowing. Really help.
I love that. I love that because for me, anyways, I'm not a songwriter, but I am a poet, and I will be it's usually at the gym because I freaking live at the gym. But even during the day, like there's always words going through my head all day, and it's sometimes
Yeah,
my brain just like highlights highlights words that rhyme. I don't know, just get a phrase in my head, and I'm just like, "Ooh, that sounds good,
sure.
rhythmical." And then I'm just next thing you know, I've got my notepad on my phone open, and I'm just blam.
Yep, I
Um,
totally get that, especially with finding rhymes. I love playing with words.
I do too.
Yeah.
Words are the best things to play with. Okay, that sounded weird. So we do have to wrap up, unfortunately. Let's see here. Is there anything? Let's see. Where do you see yourself going in terms of your artistry? What do you want to? What do you want to do with this? Where do you?
I I want to be known and seen by the world. Uh, because I've always had things to say that I feel like would be able to help people. Um, I know I needed that when I was younger, and what I could get from musicians that I loved saved my life.
Hmm.
And I'd love to play that role in somebody else's life as a creator. I mean, it's hard to imagine. I would love to have a certain level of fame and notoriety. To be completely honest, I always have. I want to be able to make a living off of what I love to do. And it's scary because this industry is so hard to break into now. I grew up with parents in the music industry. My dad was a record producer and songwriter. My mom's a singer-songwriter and a vocal coach, and they had some really great success at a time where the industry was a lot more accessible and focused on talent and not so much how marketable somebody is. Um, and what's challenging now too is there's so much out there. You could be super famous in one niche and nobody knows who you are and like have like millions of followers. It's weird. It's a really weird time for music.
Yeah, sorry.
I would I want to be successful in that I'm able to reach people and transform lives with the music I make, whilst also being able to live comfortably, and provide for myself and hopefully someone I love in the future. Um, that would be amazing. But it's scary. It's scary. I have such imposter syndrome too sometimes, and trying to make sure my sobriety and recovery is at the top of my list is also really challenging because I don't get to have any of that, any of the things I'm talking about unless I'm sober. Um,
Do you ever find it hard living in the shadow of your successful parents? Because they're not just producers, y'all. They're like deep producers. And they're like the white Ashford and Simpson. I'm just saying.
Oh my God. Not at all. My parents have always had their hands off of me and my career, and they've just been my fans. And they're just such huge inspirations to me creatively. Just like objectively as like a listener and a fan of their music, like they really inspire me and push me to be a better writer and singer and producer. And I'm so grateful that I can go to them looking for guidance or to get their opinions on things and know that they know what they're talking about. I'm also grateful that they haven't given me any like handouts or anything, because it's just, that would suck. I want to do this on my own.
You're
And
not a Nepo baby.
yeah, they've let me do that. It's funny, like even if they wanted to help, like they really can't anymore. It's just the industry is completely different.
I do want to say one thing. I've told you this privately, but hell, I'll put it publicly. So, one of my favorite movies growing up was The First Flex Club, and yes, I'm so gay. but but the reason it was one of my favorite movies is because it was one of my mom's favorite movies. And my mom, growing up, we used to be super, super close. Her addiction kind of robbed me of that relationship. But that movie was one of those moments that my mom would sit down and we'd sit down together and we watch that movie over and over and over again. But there's one specific scene where all the women are fighting. I know the exact scene. All the women are fighting. They're not talking to each other. Um, and there's a song playing, and I've always remembered the song. I've never forgotten that song, and it's "Love Is on the Way." And I can see it, I can hear it. It takes me back to back to a happy time. Even though it's not a happy time in the movie, the song is a very uplifting, a very hopeful song. Your parents freaking wrote that song. This is such a small world, y'all. But thank you, Ari's parents, who I won't name. But thank you, for that song. It takes me back to a happy time.
Yeah, man, that means so
Sweet.
much to me.
Didn't want to cry on this show. I cried a lot.
No, it's
So,
okay.
Um,
It's just so cool that to hear you say that, because you know that song means the world to me too. It's the reason I was able to grow up living the life I did and like have the things that I have. And it's just so beautiful that my parents came together and wrote that piece of music, and like I got to watch them perform it all the time growing up. It was originally a song that was going to go to Billy Porter, actually.
I think he's the one that sings it in the movie. No,
I think so.
so it's not Celine. I think it's
It's probably Billy. It might be Billy, but yeah, then Celine really wanted it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Celine. Can we pick up that name real quick? Celine who?
Celine Dion.
One
Celine.
and only, y'all. I told you,
Celine Dion.
they're not just producers like LA producers. Everyone in LA is a producer.
Yeah, like me.
Hey. You actually have a pretty good catalog, Mr. Zizzo.
Aw, I appreciate it, man.
Now let's see. Okay, we gotta wrap up because I gotta go to the gym because these gains ain't gonna gain themselves. Okay, right? Rapid fire. First thing that comes to mind when I say the following words: Ari is rapid fire.
Great.
Yay! Music is
Life-saving.
recovery is
Magical.
love is
Complicated.
life is
Complex.
death is
What I just had the word.
oh
Unavoidable.
that's funny. Truth is
Key.
ooh Now, I always do this whenever I interview someone when they go into their personal story. I never want anyone to feel alone, even though I do kind of share pretty much through the whole episode. But is there anything you want to ask me?
Oh, wow.
I'm an open book since you've been an open book for the past hour and a half.
How has changing your body and how you feel in your skin changed your life?
Whoa. For those that don't know, I used to be, 200 pounds heavier. I've had some surgeries. How has changing my body changed my life? This is one of those things I wish they would make people go through the 2 years of therapy for, because I was not prepared for how different the world is being a relatively fit person as opposed to being a morbidly obese person. And I hate that phrase so much, um, because I went from being ironically invisible to most people, to being seen by a lot of people.
I hear
And
that.
the attention at first, as a gay man who was often called a fat because we're so kind to other men, um, so kind. Yeah, I was just deemed a fat and I wasn't talked to. I was called gross. So whenever I started dropping the weight and being noticed, like I felt like I owed my body to every single guy that hit on me. Um, like I owed them because they're seeing my ugliness because I still felt very ugly at the time. Uh, Ugh, I haven't talked about a whole lot of this. Damn you, Ari. But it changed me in so many ways. I'm seeing now, and at some point in my life, that became very addictive. Because I'm learning that I have a lot of power being, a decently attractive guy. Like there's a lot of power that comes with that I was not prepared for. That's addicting. It can be for me at least, and I could get a lot of free dope.
Yeah.
Not always a good thing.
Oh, I hear that, sir.
Not always a good thing. But it's I now I had weight loss surgery in 2010, but I promised myself if I went there with it, that I would keep the weight off, and I have. And I become obsessed with bodybuilding like it's my life. Like I love it. Trying to get bigger, that's just my thing. It's it's changed me in ways that I can't quite articulate at times, but I wouldn't change it. It's much easier being in the world as a fit person than it is being a very large person. I hate the F word. But being a larger person, and I wish that was very different, but unfortunately, that's just the way the world is right now, especially in LA. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel like I went from being like a 7 in New Mexico to like a 3 in LA, so I'm trying to.
Oh, stop.
But
No, I so relate to that in my own way, and that's why I like talking about being trans because I can relate my transness to that
I didn't even think about.
um, big time. Like getting used to being seen and not feeling invisible.
Mm.
And I feel like anybody in the world can relate to that
Mm.
in their own ways. And that's so important because it makes us human, that
Oh,
we're relatable.
I think it's very telling, or maybe it's a God shot, that you asked that question at the end, and we kind of tied it all together. So it's a beautiful way to end on. Uh,
Mm.
so Ari, I love you. This is probably going to be the second episode, even though I've got a bunch of episodes in the can I need to work on. But honestly, it's very vital for me in my recovery and my journey.
Um,
Thank you. And I don't know why I'm rocking around. But if you're watching on YouTube, we're a rock and roll here. Ari, I love you so much. Thank you for your time and thank you for being so open.
I love you so much, Paul. You're such a special guy. Thank you for having me on here and for asking me about myself. It means a lot that you care.
Of course, and thank you for providing our theme song royalty free because I'm not making a dime off of this. Here we go. Give Mango some scratches for me. I love
I
you. We'll
will.
talk soon.
All right, I love you, Paul.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. If you like what you heard, please consider a subscription. Starts at $3 a month, and you will help me support the show and keep it going. It is not free, and it takes a lot of time to produce, but it is a passion project of mine, and it feeds my spirit and it keeps me sober. So consider giving a subscription. You can find that in the description of the podcast on whichever app you're listening on. Again, I'm Uncle Paul, and this is In the Arena with Uncle Paul. And until next time, stay alive.
These words will never let me go. Oh,